Hello, good afternoon to everyone. I think we'll probably get started now just because I know that everyone's super busy and we have a lot of information to sort of pack into this hour. Hopefully lots of useful information for you to take forward into Christmas. It is only fitting, of course, that it is the summer solstice today, that we'd be talking about something that happens at the end of the year. But holidays and such. So we've got lots of ideas. I could just do some admin stuff first. If you've not been with us on a webinar before and you can't stay the whole time today, please don't worry. These will go up on our website afterwards, so you'll be able to watch to your heart's content as many times as you like after, to gain all the knowledge and insights from the frankly stupendous fundraisers that we have with us today. Just one quick thing. We are recording this. Oh, it's not moving on, is it? Of course it's not. No, has it moved on? No. Hang on. Hang on. Moved on? I'm asking you and you're all muted. Yes. So one quick thing, we are recording this in order that you can access it afterwards. So this goes up on the Pebblebeach website. If you signed up with a ticket today, I will send those links out next week once we've had a chance to put it up on the website for you. So please do not worry if you've got to shoot off for whatever reason. And if you are coming in, please do mute yourself. If you can, that's very helpful, or we will do it for you, not in a forceful way, just in a gentle, loving way. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to announce some of the fantastic fundraisers that we have with us today. So we have Ruth from Christian Aid Ireland, we've got Katie from Isabel Hospice, and we've got Hazel from Scottish Action for Mental Health, here to be known as SAMH, just so that we can get the words out in time. And they have very kindly agreed to be very candid about what has happened in the past year in terms of their Christmas/winter appeals. And I should preface this by saying we've said Christmas, but obviously there are plenty of other holidays and celebrations that happen in the winter. Whatever floats your boat and whatever you plan to do, that is totally fine. We do know that there's plenty of charitable activity that happens during that time of year. So whatever you want to call it, that is totally cool. So here's the agenda today, and you'll be very happy to know that I won't be talking very much because our esteemed fundraisers will be. But the general goal is to understand what these charities did in 2023. So when I say 2023, I mean Christmas or winter of 2023. What activity did they do for fundraising? Then we go on to say, what did we learn from what we did? So what were the takeaways from those particular activities? And how has that informed the plans for what's actually happening this year? So yeah, I joked that is the summer solstice today, but realistically, like the next 6 months are going to be sort of jam-packed with activities. And you've got to make the most of the time that you have now to make those plans for that really busy winter period. And how do we start working on 2024? So everybody has been very candid and given us loads of insights, and I hope you can take away stuff that will help you in your charity as far as possible. So I'm going to go on to the first question, which was, how was 2023? Now, it's a very broad question, but as I go to Ruth first, the idea behind this is to really just give an overview of what happened within your charity last year. So what was the plan? What did you intend to undertake? So Ruth, if I hand over to you to kind of explain the
Sure. The slide that I can see is the privacy information slide. So should that be on a little bit? Just wondering.
It sure should.
Okay, there you go. So do you want, yeah, I can see a slide with our logo. That's brilliant. Thank you, Amy. So am I talking about what we were trying to do plus what we also did, or just what we were aiming for?
I think what you were trying to do is also really helpful. So yeah, while we have the real picture here, you can also talk about sort of the ambitions behind it. Yeah.
Sure. Great. Okay. Well, thanks very much. And thanks for asking us to be part of the webinar. So yeah, predominantly Christmas is a time to raise cash, and let's not be behind the bush about that. We want to raise some money from our supporters. And it's the time of year when we include our regular donors as well in our cash appeals. And we don't do that all through the year, but at Christmas we do. But we're also in Christian Aid Ireland trying to see all of our campaigns and appeals now through the lens of how are we engaging with new people, how are we acquiring new donors through it. We also see it as a time of year to steward our warm donors, and we do that through personalised Christmas cards, particularly, and maybe some events. And for us in Christian Aid, we engage with churches through the year as well, and church communities. And so it's Christmas is the time, of course, whenever we can use usually the same story as we're using for IG and with our churches, maybe with a slightly different spin and with some different resources. So we want to keep them warm and keep them talking about Christian Aid as well. So probably around this time last year, we tested some AdSeps, and that gave us a bit of insight into our donors. And we have supporters in Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland, so that sometimes complicates things. It's obviously dual currency, and we've always got to be mindful of the two different countries. So that gave us a little bit of insight into what our donors like, what's important to them. It reinforced our knowledge that Christian Aid's brand is much stronger in Northern Ireland. We carried out an appeal DM with a leaflet. We included an in-mem tick box on that to increase the sense of personalisation and connection. We supported all of it with e-marketing and paid socials and paid search. We also promote our charity gifts at Christmas time, and we start that usually around October by sending out the brochure with our magazine at that stage. We did our personalised handwritten Christmas cards for kind of key worked major donors, for some of our regular givers, for our key volunteers, and some just key people in our network. And then as well as that, we wanted to try some new things in our church engagement. So we trialed an event where we used the story that we were highlighting with Christmas crafting to try and generate a slightly new audience. And that worked pretty well. And we combined that then with a regular giving ask at the event. So that felt like plenty of info.
Yeah. I wonder if you could elaborate on the in-mem tick box. So what did that actually ask people to do?
Yeah, so in the response device, where people are, just filling in what they want to give, etc., and sending back to us, we included a box where they could say, I'm giving this in memory of, and they could fill the person's name in. And so whenever we were writing back, then we were able to personalize the letter of thanks. So I think 60 to 70 people used that, and one person gave 5,000 off the back of that. And so that's really encouraging, and it just allows us to, I suppose, help that person feel connected to us and feel that we're connecting with them in a personal way. It adds to the stewardship.
Super. And it obviously paid off, as you've mentioned, by just adding that really tiny piece. Has this slide moved on yet? I just want to make sure.
We're still on. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So those are some of the visuals then, the DM, the outer, some of the ads that we ran. So you can see the theme was It's Our Time to Shine, and for a story from Bangladesh.
And everything looks quite uniform as well. So it's nice. Yeah, nice theme.
Yeah, I think it's very aesthetically pleasing. We've brought in the Christmas theme, obviously, as well, to that.
Excellent. Thanks, Ruth. And obviously we'll be coming back to talk about results and stuff.
Sure.
So if I move on now, I've got Hazel from SAMH, Scottish Action for Mental Health. Hopefully this has moved on. Who knows at this point? Hazel, are you around?
I'm here. Hello. Hi.
Oh, hello.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Hazel McElraith. I'm Director of Fundraising and Major Appeal at SAMH. I'm pretty new at SAMH, so I've just finished my first year there. And when I first went in, we're actually, although SAMH is 100 years old and a very established charity, their fundraising is actually still quite young. We only started fundraising wholeheartedly about 15 years ago, and predominantly that was in community and events. Individual giving is still very young and in its infancy, and we only started really, again, probably 5 years ago. We had never actually done a large direct mail appeal. Everything they had tried previously had never worked. They'd never done door drops. There hadn't been that sort of cold drop. They had just kept with their warm donors, looked at very small winter appeals that would maybe bring in £2,000 a year. So they were very small. So One of the things I wanted to do was understand our data, because that was very important to understand the data that we were going to be dealing with. I had worked with Pebblebeach on lots of different occasions, and we decided that we wanted to do quite a large winter appeal. So when we started looking at this, we decided we wanted to do warm donors across the whole database, but also looking at a cold audience, because we had never actually gone out to a cold audience to ask them what they think of SAMH, would they give to us? So that was really important for us to sort of pick postcodes and do a door drop when we were looking at that. We decided to do a direct mail door drop and also digital ad campaign with warm digital activity, because we knew that we were quite strong online. So we went to 55,000 people in the end with our door drop and our warm donors. So it was a very big appeal for SAMH to do. We had to really be careful about what we were deciding to go out with. We started it in November, we ended it in January 2024. So we look after mental health. It's quite tricky to find something compelling that case studies that people want to speak about as well with regards to direct mail campaigns. We knew we had to have something that was hard hitting, because this was the first one that we did. So we wanted to go out with suicide prevention. We had quite a little bit of kickback internally, so we had to really look at that internally as well. Comms team, etc., were worried about it. Should we go out with a suicide prevention ask? We had a case study of a young person, and we said, it would be very tastefully done. We'd have warning signs on the envelope that there could be trigger stories, etc., in there. So we had to think of all of that and take that into account before we sent it out. We did go with a suicide prevention story linked predominantly to our information service and our information line over Christmas, to explain, obviously, people's anxiety can get, more over Christmas. Not everyone enjoys Christmas or the winter holiday season. So it was a really big risk for SAMH to do this. And I know we're not talking results at the moment. Our results were very interesting. When we get to the results, we'll explain. I don't know whether we can move on to the next slide to show the images that we used.
I think I've done that. Whether or not I have is a
Not showing. Oh, there they are.
Hey.
oh, just a delay.
So we went for something very modern, actually. It wasn't particularly Christmassy. Again, because we have a very diverse service user wide, we didn't want it to be fully Christmas. You'll see the Christmas tree is there in the background, but it wasn't particularly Christmassy. It was very much a winter appeal. We tried to avoid using the word Christmas, I think, through it all. It was very much holiday season, winter appeal, because we knew this was going to a very large demographic. The story was very hard-hitting. Callum, we had his sister write, but we also had his niece write a story as well. So on the opposite side of Katie's story there, we had a story from his niece, which was just quite heartbreaking. The thing that people were very concerned about is that we would get complaints. So the comms team were so worried that there would be complaints about what we were putting out, and we didn't receive one complaint. There was nothing that came back. If anything, people were happy that we'd highlighted how problematic winter can be for people, how stressful Christmas can be for people. As I say, we used our colours that's in our brand, but we kept it very stylish for SAMH as well, in a sense. It was all quite muted, the blues. We wanted it not to be the bright pinks and everything else going out. It was all quite in our muted colours. We didn't actually have a trigger response coming back either. That was one thing that usually we would do, is have something in so people can come back to us. We didn't have any of that. It was quite different to campaigns that I had run previously. It did work, but it gave us very interesting results moving forward. And I'll wait until we get to the results bit to reveal.
Excellent. And as you can see too, I suppose quite different appeals already, which is, I think, what's so amazing about this is that we can show the different ways that people are approaching this type of appeal during that point in the year. Katie, I haven't seen you yet today. I'm hoping you're here.
I'm here.
Oh, excellent. Oh, and here she is. Here's Katie.
So hello everybody. So I'm Katie, head of fundraising marketing here at Isabel Hospice. So being a community hospice, obviously we try to put on lots of different ways of giving, I suppose is the best way to do it, around the Christmas period. 2023 was an incredible year. for fundraising. We've seen some incredible successes and some real significant growth in memory of 50% and also individual giving by 37%. What we unfortunately we're seeing though was obviously such a decline in hospice-led events, so obviously looking at things differently this year. But sort of coming on to Christmas, sorry Amy, can we move slide over? So as I say, being a community hospice, what we want to do is be really sort of mindful of our supporters. So again, a bit like Hazel was saying and Ruth, really, it's all about our demographics of why they want to give, how they want to give, you know, and how they're sort of connected to us at the hospice. So we try to do different options. We obviously have our Lights of Love, which I know lots of hospices do. We also do our Christmas raffle. We had our Christmas jumper day, which was to try and encourage our community and our corporate supporters to get involved. We have Carols in the Chapel, which is just a beautiful service within a church. Again, a different demographic, but something year on year that just grows. And we also have like Manor Groves and a few other things going on. We gave it an overarching theme, which was really important. It really helped internally, but actually it really helped for morale with the team as well, because we gave ourselves an overarching target for our care at Christmas. But not only that, it enabled us to do a micro campaign around this also. So, and this took us into a different sort of way of thinking and working with our demographics. It was more of a digital campaign. So it was gifts for good. Sorry, I couldn't get my words out then, sort of thing. So really sort of based on those specific sort of price points around Christmas. So the cost of a meal, the cost of a nurse going out over the Christmas period and various other things. So this was really successful and really made us look at things differently. I think what's been really key is the segmenting of our data. So data is absolutely key through all of this and through some of the successes we'll see going forward.
Caught me just as I was typing a message to the group. Just multitasking business here. Thank you for that, Katie. So as you guys will have seen, there is a common thread between all of these, I suppose, activities, and that is that there is some element of direct mail. In some cases, door drop as well. In some cases, more than one direct mail. Katie, looking at you. And also some digital activity. And so I think broadly we have addressed most of that within the results, so you can kind of see the difference. If anyone was at our regular giving webinar a month ago, you'll have seen that we kind of were very cagey about results in terms of, especially if it's like an acquisition campaign or a digital campaign, and that they're quite low. But we do have some interesting, I think, results, as Hazel kind of alluded to, that will give you some food for thought when it comes to planning activities for this year. So Ruth, I think we started with you again. It should be coming up shortly if it's not right now.
Yeah, it's not there yet, but we will we'll crack on regardless, Amy. So I think we're being quite candid when the slide comes up and saying that the income that we got from Christmas 2023 didn't reach what we wanted it to reach. However, in saying that, we did raise about £70,000 sterling. I'm saying about because with the two currencies, and so it's a rough conversion into one. In Northern Ireland, it was a 4.35% response rate offline, and in Republic of Ireland, 7.56% response rate. We generally see a good response rate in Republic of Ireland, although our file is smaller. But the interesting thing was that offline, the average gift was significantly higher. And so I guess it's hard to say exactly why this was, but we had two emergency appeals in quite quick succession, one for Libya in September and then the Middle East crisis then, which kicked off in October. And so that I'm sure has a knock-on effect. The other reflection that we have is around the content. So the story from Bangladesh, it was really wonderful women who in a patriarchal society and in a very a location where the climate is impacting livelihoods, and being able to revitalize these old ancient crafts and start e-commerce business and work together in cooperatives and that kind of thing was really lovely. But I think upon reflection and what we're kind of hearing as a team is that maybe it lacked a sense of urgency. I think it's interesting to hear the sharpness of the other appeals that have been run that we're talking about today. And so that's definitely a learning for us. We did some paid search work, etc. And that you can see there, we got about €11,000 through that, which was a reduction on the year before. And then our email campaign, our e-marketing campaign, which contributed, we saw a better response rate for the first email that we delivered in November, rather than the ones that happened in December. And we also had a slight delay in getting our DM out, so it posted about on the 1st of December, and we had wanted it to post before the end of November, and that was just I think bottlenecks within the fulfillment and printing side of things. I'd already mentioned the in-memory tick box, which we felt was really successful. We've done that a couple of times now, and we'll continue that type of thing where someone can have an option to tick something extra so that we get to learn more about our donors, and so they feel that sense of personalization. And then the event that I talked about, where we combined craft with the and cookery as well, with a local chef and with the theme, our Christmas story, sold out really quickly, and we had then some regular donor signups through that, and we'll definitely look to continue that type of thing in the future to support the overall campaign goals.
Ruth, just on that point, so on the event, did you talk about the campaign in terms of like the theme and like what you were raising money for
Yeah.
DM? Yeah, so
Yeah,
it was
we did.
directly related to what you were sending out in the post.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we wanted to carry that on, and because the craft was coming through in the DM and the projects that the women in Bangladesh were involved in, it fit really well. And then sprinkled with a little bit of Christmas cookery as well.
Did people get to bring stuff home, or was it all eat it there?
Yeah, we just had little samples there, Amy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a point for next time though.
Yeah, well, if I can travel that far for my, I mean, it's an option. Let's see. All right, thank you for that, and we will be going on to learnings from this as well. So I've taken some notes there. Katie, when you can see this slide, when the horse has finally brought it round, you could talk about your results from all of your activity, which was a lot of activity.
We did have a lot of activity. Sadly, we also had the Santa Dash that we did have to cancel. As I said before, we're finding a significant decline in hospice-led events, an increase in challenge events, third-party events, but certainly not in our hospice-led events. So it's we had to take the heartbreaking decision to cancel that. But we set ourselves a goal with our overarching sort of theme of 120,000, which we managed to surpass through those activities that we've got. So we saw a increase in tree cycling, so an increase in Lights of Love. We completely surpassed our Christmas raffle target, which was really exciting. And again, it just with the various things, it just gave an opportunity, obviously, for us to bring the community together, which is so important. So through our Lights of Love events, and that was really exciting this year, because ordinarily we were running on a lot more events than what we did do. So we minimized those a little bit this year and actually found a greater success from making a main event. And this actually saw a better return of income, and which isn't really generally the theme at a lot of these Lights of Love events. It was so important, like you say, to get the direct mail out and to get it out in a time, at the right time for Lights of Love, and also with the raffle. So everything was planned. We start having our sort of Christmas sort of planning from now to make sure, obviously, that we can get all the marketing planned and everything else. So that's absolutely key. I think one of the biggest noteworthy results as well is our digital sort of micro campaign that I was talking about. So those sort of gifts for goods. So ordinarily, with our demographics, we see a higher return on our direct mails, which was still the case. But what we have seen is a significant growth in a digital sort of campaign. So the gifts for goods was all digital, and we saw a return of £10,000 on that, which was incredible. So that's something we'll obviously incorporate going forward. So yes, would you like me to elaborate further, Amy, or?
Yes. However, I'm still trying to make sure that this has actually moved on, which it seems like it hasn't, but
No.
I don't know
So
let me see if I can jar it into moving. Any action?
So we've got the noteworthy results up there. As I say, it's I think obviously, again, with the hospice, all our supporters predominantly have an in-memory sort of connection of some kind. I often say other than cyclists, but generally there's an in-memory connection. So again, it's really important to understand the attributes and understand our supporters, and as I say, why it is they want to give and what they want to give to. And I think that's something also that we had to be really mindful of. Sorry, I was looking at the question, the same as
save yourself for
thank
those,
you.
Katie. Don't worry.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I did have one question on that. So you just in terms of the gifts for goods, and obviously you can elaborate on this further later on. I'm sure someone has asked a question about that. That gifts for goods, what is an example of the good? Is it like stuff? I mean, what was the price points there for you?
So, for example, that it'd be like £28 would pay for a meal of, like 4 family members, or a specific price point for a hospice at home nurse going out into the community at Christmas. So really utilising, obviously, sort of all the language around Christmas, and just using a lot of the price points we've got. We do find our greatest successes are from being really obviously honest and transparent about how much everything costs. So the more sort of price points we've got and the way that we can utilise them and making sure that they're in theme with what's going on seems to be a really big advantage.
Yeah, and if anybody who's ever worked with Pebblebeach or heard us talk before, that's a really big thing for us and me personally as well. So like we'd always want to have something that actually pertains to something you're going to pay for, because give us a tenner at this time of year. It's the sort of crisis,
Absolutely,
Christmas model. Like, let's talk about what you're actually going to spend the money on at
Definitely.
this point.
And we have found with our supporters, it is that sort of tangible thing that they want to give. And I think, again, that's important through that analysis. I don't find always, like you say, all emergency appeals with just that sort of generic ask. There has to be that real sort of strong case for support and reason to want to give, and what to give against, so they feel that they are literally making a difference, to which they are.
All right, I'm going to try to, has this moved? Has it not? No. Hazel, you're going to need these. You're going to need these notes. I mean, there's a lot here to unpack. Have I managed it?
I can start.
You can start. I'm trying to sort of move it into action, but it doesn't seem to be making a difference. But I will keep doing that. You go ahead and start.
Here we go. So this is, I suppose, where our DM appeal puts a spanner in the works for everything traditional that you would ever do in a DM appeal. And I think the good thing for us is it was for money. Absolutely, we were looking for fundraising, but it was really to understand the data and our donor base that we had on there, because there had never been a deep dive into it. And it did not perform how anyone would expect. So, as I say, this was the first major appeal that we went out with. First door drop, went over 55,000 households. Total income was over 16,000. Normally, for any winter appeal, I would expect 30 to 50,000 coming in, more maybe as well, depending which charity. But we were really thrilled with 16,000. That was the most that SAMH had ever brought in for an appeal. As I say, that the highest I think before was maybe £2,000, £4,000. So that was a really big leap. However, cold donors performed better than our warm donors. Now, that is, again, pretty unheard of across charity. So we were like, okay, that's really interesting. We don't quite understand what that is. But our cold donors, we had 152 cold donors who averaged a £57, £61 gift, versus our warm donors of 140. So it's not hugely different, but a lower gift of £54.43. So that, again, we were like, that's really, really interesting. These are donors that are not eventers, but these were donors who were regular givers, who were giving to us, in-mem donors, etc. And I mean, they were giving, but the cold donors were very interesting. The other interesting thing for us, this was only one ask that we had going out. It was unrestricted ask. It was a tangible ask. Our information service is funded from voluntary funds, directly from the income that we bring in. So it was tangible. Wasn't the sexiest, I'll be honest. It wasn't a really sexy ask, but it was a sort of urgent ask in, a £20 will cover an hour for someone to speak to a young person if they're in distress, etc. So we kept it all to peer-to-peer support. So the ask, as I say, was a straightforward ask. The appeal spiked in December over sort of 7th, 18th and 21st, and then we realised that was all in line with the digital campaigning. The postal that was coming back were slow. but every time we posted something, we would get about £1,000 back straight away. So we were like, okay, so we understand now that digital seems to work better than anything postal. Our demographics, again, what this is showing, because our demographics, it's quite rare for, again, to be able to go into this amount. What this did show, from sort of looking at it, we all sat there afterwards, and I mean, I've been in this game for over 20 odd years. My colleagues, we all sat around a table and said, never seen anything like this. Pebblebeach said the same. I mean, Chelsea, we were there going, what is it? We've never seen anything like this. So what I have done is actually create a post for a data insight specialist to really dig into our data. And that's how I now have my demographics of exactly what's there, seeing exactly how they're going to perform. As I say, our individual giving is very young at the moment. We raise on average 300,000 a year, but we are a national charity. We would expect that to be higher, but we don't understand how the donors are reacting to us. So this is a really key piece for us to look at. 88 women, 45 men, 7 unknown. And then the demographics for the code, again, was 74 women, 57 men, 21 unknown. The average gift for men was slightly higher than for women, which again is quite interesting, although men are more susceptible to suicide, unfortunately. And as I said, the really important thing, there was no negative responses to the appeal, because that was really key, because people were really scared we would get negative responses. The median gift across everything was £25, which again was quite good. We were quite happy with that. What else is very exciting to know? And yeah, the average gift for men was slightly higher. So we know moving forward what we're going to have to do, because it's we have to then look at how this data is absolutely performing to us, what we're going to do in the future. And that's kind of when we get to the new planning for the next year, what we're going to do. It's going to be a digital campaign, that's for sure, that we're going to be looking at. But yeah, it was really, really interesting, but it's made us have to look a lot more into things that we're going to have to do moving forward to understand the data. We have very supportive community and events fundraising. Our corporate fundraising is very strong. Trust and foundations very strong. As I say, individual giving needs quite a little bit of work in there. Exactly what Katie's saying. We're seeing, this is probably the first year since COVID that we're seeing a normal events year. Our third party events, we don't have spaces left for them. And I think everything's changed slightly in fundraising land at the moment. It's really difficult out there. And I don't think people understand just quite how difficult. The competition is fierce. And I think exactly as you're saying, you have to be sure you have a very tangible, impactful, relatable product to go out with. It can't be sort of airy-fairy. It cannot be something that it's just, it might go towards this, it might go towards that. You have to be able to prove everything at the moment. And I think quite rightly as well. But the landscape, I think, is changing quite considerably.
No, thank you all three for that. I think it's really refreshing to have a candid conversation about results rather than, sort of hiding them away and saying these are ours. We can't possibly tell you how much we have, because ultimately it helps people to understand, I suppose, where they sit within this, how much activity would need to happen to produce X amount of results. And equally, I'm sure, I'm sort of putting this on the record, but I'm sure that if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, they probably could drop you a line to talk a bit more about some things, but we shall hold that off for now. All right, the horse not moving, I'm sure. We're moving on to what we've learned. So there's a sort of a general slide here, which I'm going to have to walk you through. But if we can, I'm letting my people on the ground let me know if this has moved on. Can we see the planning and strategy slide? No.
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe in a few minutes. When the satellite rolls around, I don't know how we get our internet. I don't know how that stuff works. Okay, so I will start talking about this and I will tell you what they are effectively if you can't see it yet. But the first thing that I think all of you mentioned was earlier planning and earlier go dates. I don't know if anyone wants to pick that one up. When did you start planning for last year and what are you doing differently now, I suppose?
I'm happy to go with it. I mean, I was only there years. I started in May. So we started straight away. I mean, it was one of the first meetings I had when I arrived, was to meet all of the teams, but also to look and say, what's happening in individual giving? What are we doing with the winter appeal? We've already started planning for this year. So again, as soon as it was finished, we really just started again in January. We finished in January. We then now have just got our full report back of what we're looking at data-wise. And then we started planning what is that going to look like, and the planning's in place. So yeah, January is when we started, straight after we had the results in from the last one.
Everyone's delighted about that, I'm sure. So summer solstice, too late, I'm afraid. But we can but try now in June as much as we can. I'm interested in this one, and I'm interested in all your perspective on this, because Hazel, you did actually touch on this a bit. But I'm also interested in this from a religious charity perspective. So Christmas is okay, but the story should be urgent. And Ruth, you were kind of talking about this in relation to what was happening in Gaza.
Yeah, I think for our audience base, it's important to talk about Christmas and to relate things to Christmas. That's okay, that's safe for us. But yes, I think if the story has to feel urgent for people. So this year we'll be focusing on South Sudan, obviously Sudan and South Sudan in the news a lot, and the situation that people are in is pretty dire. People moving, having to leave because of conflict and start again, or living in refugee camps, that kind of thing. So that will kind of add a sense of urgency, but I suppose, there's a jarring then, because you're talking about Christmas and then you're presenting something very, very different, but it sounds like, or I guess different from the feeling that we associate with Christmas. However, what we've heard from the other panelists is that that's maybe okay, and that people are ready to hear that message, to hear that Christmas isn't always what we think it is. So yeah, that's something that we're doing this year. We're going into kind of some testing of AdSeps at the moment, so we'll have results from those in a couple of weeks, and again that will hopefully give us a little bit of insight into segments both in Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland, and how people are thinking and responding to the potential creative.
I'll just briefly touch on the testing, reviewing, and trying again point. Obviously, everybody who's here has done that, and effectively looking back at last year is the way of how you can plan this year and be like, well, that worked, that didn't. I mean, Hazel, yours is just completely out, who knows? So, you know, whatever you can glean from that information, that's how you can go forward and make those best plans. But I think there is probably some reluctance, and it's about sort of bringing people on that journey with you and saying, look, we need to test it before we make a solid decision. We need to try things out. Katie, I think you used to have, gosh, how many lights events did you used to have? Was it like 10?
Yeah, well, 8. They've gone up to 8, and I did want to minimize it down further, but we've got it down to 6 stepping stones.
And everything's okay, right? Like nothing has fallen over.
Yeah, I say 6, well, 5 or 6, but I mean, no, I mean, I think the best thing, the outcome for me, was the fact that it was one main event, and then we had some community events, because it's you know, we're in such quite a large sort of county size, so the whole of East Hertfordshire is you know, where we cover, and I think what's really important though as a community hospice is that what we do is that we really market it though to the whole community. So it's not just obviously to our warm supporters, and as much as, you know, we don't sort of do a cold tool drop through it and everything else, but is making it really clear that everybody's welcome. You know, everybody's welcome to come and remember a loved one, or get part in you know, to become part of obviously what we do. So that's really important for me, and I think by having that one main event, we could really sort of maximize on that, and also, you know, the numbers that we got were incredible. Yes, we had lots of school choirs and that, which come with lots of mummies and granddads and grandmas, which is wonderful, but it just gave us the opportunity to really get some sort of money through as well. But also by sort of offering sort of like, you know, we always try to, you know, offer free teas and coffees. And I think it's really important though, that there's not any cost associated to people remembering their loved ones. So, yeah, so I think having a main event is really important.
I'm going to hop on from these ones, because some of the things that we're going to talk about sort of in the planning stage, or in the what we do in this year stage, will I think address some of this. I just wanted to touch briefly, if you can see this, on drilling down into the proposition, because this was a big topic, I think, that you've all highlighted within talking about your results. So the three key things, if at all possible, is what do we actually need as a charity? What will it mean for the people who use our charities, the beneficiaries, and why is it important? So all three of those, I think, were very handily addressed in all of your campaigns and appeals. And, you know, I'm sure people will be interested to hear what the plan is for this year in terms of what you're actually going out and raising money for, given, you know, all the things we've mentioned about what's going on in the world. So I shall hop on again, whether or not you can see it, I don't know. So these are sort of rapid fire questions. If I could have an answer from each of you, please. How are we saying thank you?
This year coming, is it? Amy?
Oh, sorry,
Or
go
in general?
whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Katie, you go ahead.
So yeah, so the same question though, really. So are we talking last year how we're saying thank you, or how are we saying thank you going forward?
Maybe you could say what you did last year and what you're now going to do this year.
Okay. So obviously last year everybody gets a letter within 24 to 48 hours straight away of any donation that's made. Also, it's really important that we pick up the telephone as much as possible to try and get the gift aid declaration, but no, to say thank you and to maximise every opportunity. But we do that also very similar, you know, especially with some of our high net worth individuals and sort of major donors, we would write personalised Christmas cards and things like that. Sometimes I feel though that it is all quite sort of like generic, and we try to make it as personalized as possible. So that's why even for me it's really interesting with some of the things coming out of here of what more we can do to really make it as personal as possible, but for sort of a mass amount of people. So so they're the sort of generic ways that I suppose that we're saying thank you, obviously digitally and various other ways. Obviously we put it across our socials, we still have our thank you Thursdays and various other things, but I think it'd be interesting to hear other ways as well of being able to say thank you and to make our supporters feel as individualized as possible.
Excellent. Hazel?
So last year we did, if anyone was online, automated thank you, and then exactly the same, we'd make sure they had their letter back from. So again, our letter was from a children and young person practitioner. So it would come from that person, and then the thank you came from that person as well. And then what we did was a follow-up with an impact sort of postcard, was to then say, you know, just to let you know what your donation has done so far, XYZ, which we will continue to do because we know that's going to work, with no ask. So there was nothing to say give again or anything else. It was just a straightforward thank you. Yeah, it was just, here's the impact. And that's again what we're looking at this year across everything, to be fair, not just DM. We have thanking days as well, where exactly we get everyone to try and get onto the phone to do phone calls or letters or postcards going out to thank. And this year, actually, something different we're doing is an in-mem thanking event, because we haven't done those before. So that will be going across for DM and events. And we're going to be doing them. Sorry, muted me there. I had enough of me. So yeah, we're doing a thanking event. We'll do one in Glasgow, one in Edinburgh. And again, just a straightforward thank you to show impact, no ask at that point. Again, because we are looking at the sort of fairly new donors as well. We also did a regular giving campaign off of the back of this campaign, and making sure that we're thanking them the same. And we're actually just about to look at our supporter journey and stewardship strategy again, just because it has to go across. There's a big team at SAMH. So again, having to make sure we're looking that everything links in, and we're doing a major appeal as well, so that has to be accounted for. Yeah, it's great, but yeah, very kind of clear, just straightforward thank yous without another ask at that point, so that we can go in again this winter and ask for more.
No, that's pretty comprehensive, I'd say. Ruth, we got any
so
on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities. I will add that we are doing a campaign of thanking over the summer of phone calls to a segment of really committed cash donors. So we're calling them simply to say thank you and to give a little bit of an update with no ask. And then we use the Christmas cards, personalized handwritten Christmas cards at Christmas time as part of that ongoing stewardship for certain segments. And actually we have made a change over the past few months to transition to email first thanks, even if the person has given offline, where if we have their email address and we can contact them that way, we're going to use that because we find that our audience appreciates the efficiency of that, the cost efficiency. But I guess that maybe wouldn't work for everybody. But yeah, those are the few things I can think that's different.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move us on to the plan for 2024. And I see all these extraneous slides as pointless, because if we are having issues seeing them, then I don't need to be showing them. Can we all see this slide, which is our plan for 2024 on it? I hope. This says SAMH. Oh, excellent. I finally figured it out, you guys. It's just taken me 45 minutes. And we will buzz through these because I have seen there's quite a few questions for you all in the comments. So Hazel, over to you. What's happening this year?
Yeah, so we're going digital only. No postal will go out this year. It will be a smaller segmentation that we're looking at. We're realizing it has to be regional stories, ideally, is what we're going to be going out with pertaining to each area. We want it to be service user voice, ideally. So we don't have our stories yet, but that's what we're looking at just now. Again, some of it's very simple. Some of it is information service. We have a couple of people that we're talking to that will give us their story. Some of it we have horticultural gardens that people work in as well, different things that for therapy, suicide prevention, but we want it to be service user voice ideally. So we're just scoping the voices, but we have the plan, if that makes sense. We know it's going to be regional. We know the areas that we're going to, and it will be digital only this year is the main thing.
It seems to correlate with what you've said in terms of, this is the growing and learning part. So you learned that was probably the way to go. And so you're going that way this year.
And I mean, it won't just be to people that we have, it'll be cold as well. So it will go out generically. We've got a digital fundraising officer who targets, again, we will put a digital strategy together across anything that we're looking at across our socials of where we want to put it, paid advertising, and it is usually paid, that we'll put out there as well. And no doubt we'll hopefully have more lovely cold donors that will come our way.
Yeah. And actually, considering Ruth and Katie have quite substantial warm databases, acquisition in the stage that SAMH is in is probably not, it's not a silly idea. So and that's something that I suppose could work alongside any warm activity at any point in the year.
Absolutely.
Just to be, building those coffers up. All right, Ruth, I think maybe you can see your slide now.
Yeah, sure. So we'll have talked about, brilliant. Every day's a school day, Amy. So yeah, I've talked about the focus on South Sudan. Our content is generally created by our colleagues in Christian Aid Britain. But this year, our CEO for Christian Aid Ireland has just travelled to South Sudan, and so that will give us some extra content to work with. We find that people in Ireland really like it when they recognise somebody in the photograph, and whenever our CEO can say, I've been here, this is what I've seen, this is who I've met. So that will be able to add, I think, and our comms team will be able to get some really good media from that as well. And we'll definitely do a DM for us. That is, that's the best way for us to get a return, but we'll support that through e-marketing, through meta and paid search. I mentioned charity gifts earlier, so that is being really simplified to and cutting down on the number of gifts. We felt it was getting unwieldy, but not more impactful, actually less impactful. So we're simplifying that down, and we're looking forward to seeing how that impacts. And then we'll get some spillover from Christian Aid in Britain through their DRTV and the inserts that they use in wider publications. And then we also will continue the idea of doing events with our warm churches that bring in the theme, but also something that people want to do, like crafting or cookery or whatever that is. And we'll hope to scale that up slightly too with an ask included.
So just a small amount of activity then for the next few months.
Yeah, sure. And a few more appeals between now and then.
Katie, please do expand.
Yes, so we're going to have a new overarching theme this year, and again, it'll have then associated with it a micro campaign. So I think really the main sort of thing that we're working on is really just trying to grow now what we achieved last year. So looking at everything, how it performed, even down to the event, moving the main event to somewhere else because we were inundated with supporters and not enough parking space and all those lovely things that come associated with it. So it's looking at that. It's looking at ways that we can increase, obviously, our tree cycling. There's postcodes that we don't get into. So I think it's about really early sort of planning and getting out there as quickly as possible to get people on board. We won't be running our own event, though, in the sense of any kind of Santa Dash, but it is really important for us to get the children involved as much as possible. So we want to look at more sort of educational sort of fundraising. So obviously our sort of fundraisers of the future. So we'll be working on that, but we will task ourselves with a overarching target. And as I say, with a new theme and that micro campaign. So again, it's just looking at and I think as well, what's really important is really sort of working on that database and trying to re-engage as many of those inactive donors as possible. Over the last year as well, we changed our privacy policy and various other things. So I think there's ways that we can maximise through that way also. And then taking on board as well some of the myself even, so sort of looking at more different ways that we can thank our supporters for going forward, which is good. So yeah, so just sort of full planning really for everything. We're really fortunate with regards to like Carols in the Chapel and Manor of Groves, a couple of other sort of side events that our special events committee do run, so which is wonderful, and they've been doing it for years and years. So that's really exciting, but gives us the chance to really sort of focus on the areas that you've got down there.
Excellent. So again, another really not busy season for you. So
Yeah.
pretty smooth sailing through there. We've got this slide here, and this is kind of just an amalgamation of sort of some of the stuff that we talked about. And it's really just to give you an idea of all of the kinds of activities that you can do. And again, there's way more than this, but it's just a sampling of some of the stuff that our panelists have said today. And as I say, there are plenty more things, but I suppose the real things to think about, and maybe in relation to some of the things that you've heard today, are these particular points. So I think first and foremost, you've got to figure out what your goal is. So if your goal is acquiring new donors, then potentially that cold data exercise, the digital campaign might be the area that you go into. If your goal is income, as it often is, then it's about thinking about what resources you have to make those things possible. So where are the quickest wins? And as we've kind of already shown, a lot of the DM activity that is happening still seems to be the way, bar SAMH's experience of getting the money in. But even then, the door drop was still instrumental in that. So it's about thinking about what has worked in the past. And again, we always look back so we can go forward and plan creatively. Why do you need money this winter? So this is something, Ruth, that we did kind of talk about, is the sharpness and urgency of the particular asks is really important at this time of year, because there are so many charities that if they do anything in the year, it will be during this time. It will be in the winter. So how are you comparing yourselves to Crisis or Shelter or some people that do vital work actually in the winter? And how can you show that to people so that they understand that the money is actually urgent at this point in the year? Because ultimately, to get that cut through, you're going to have to, and competition is such a kind of weird word for it, but we have to show people why it's important that you have the money now. And if it isn't important that you have the money now, then maybe we look at not having winter activity if that is the thing that makes the most sense for your charity. And then we can look at what's the best way to tell your story to particular groups. So the channels are important, and every single panelist here has shown all the different channels that they have available to them, whether it's in person, whether it's digital, whether it's door drop, whether it's direct mail. And yeah, again, going back to that resource and the goal question, all of these questions should, I suppose, help you to formulate some sort of plan that makes sense in terms of how much you got, how much time you got, all that kind of thing. If I left anything out, esteemed fundraisers, because after all, you are the experts here. Well, on that note, we have some questions. And I just want to say, first of all, before we move on to those questions, a huge thanks to you guys for taking part in this. We really appreciate your honesty and transparency about all the things that you've done and accomplished this past year in terms of Christmas. We really appreciate it. Chelsea, it's a new person. Chelsea, are you around with any questions for us?
I'm here.
Ah, here she is.
Yes, we have lots of questions. Some of them you've answered throughout the webinar though, so we'll go for the ones you've not answered. That'll save time for everyone, won't it? First question is for you, Katie. So, Christy wonders, within your Christmas campaign, did you include any non-fundraising services and events, or was it all purely income generation?
It was all purely income generation.
Thank you.
Hard-hearted
Short and sharp
fundraiser.
answer, I like that.
It's all about the money. No, it's not. No, so we do look at sort of like sort of engagement events throughout the year, but Christmas there's a real focus around that sort of income to generate. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that some of your events, that even though they are income focused, there is still the kind of holistic, emotional aspects to it. So, there is still the writing the names, the hanging the stars, all that kind of stuff. So it's not
absolutely, and all the
get them
support
there
is
for the
there.
income, but
no, absolutely. And that's why actually Lights of Loves is always not a funny one, but obviously the money's generated from the direct mail. Obviously the event becomes part of that, but actually the event really is like a thank you to our supporters to a degree, as much as it is part of the DM. But the ask is obviously about getting the name in the book and various other things. So yeah, so for us, it's really about bringing our community together, knowing that we're there to support them at any time, and it's time for them to laugh, cry, and just sort of come together and be with other people that are all feeling the same. So yes, so there's definitely that holistic sort of side of it, which obviously is what encompasses hospice care completely.
wonderful, thank you. Julie wonders, are each of your appeals restricted or unrestricted? Ruth, I see that you've already answered that in the comment section. Thank you very much. You confirmed that yours was unrestricted.
Yeah, and from us, everything I try to do and promote is unrestricted. To the point that what I try to do with some campaigns is items that are within the budget. We try to offset the cost so we can still run an unrestricted campaign around it, but it gives them the opportunity to be able to spend the monies that they would have already aligned to something else on something else.
We were unrestricted too.
So Georgia asked, how do you thank your donors? But we've already covered that one. And she also asked all of you, did you do anything different for your mid-value or high-value audience in your DM appeals? Now, I can answer this for all of you, but I'll let you answer.
No. So obviously, like you say, it's an opportunity for us to do so. And actually going forward, I think for me now we've been here and we're starting to identify who those people really are. It's something we certainly will probably look at now more so going forward. But I think that just with the data and getting the data cleaned and everything else, we haven't done anything to date other than the major donors and potential high net worth individuals that I'm used to that I will deal with differently.
Happy to jump in there as well. We didn't this time round, but we're just about to do a mid-level campaign that will be slightly different to what we've done before. And again, it was just because we didn't really have clear data. So now that we have the data from the winter appeal and the regular giving appeal, we're looking to do a mid-level campaign. And then because we have a large appeal, that's a £10 million appeal, the major donors have all been moved over. But we don't have a huge amount of major donors, but all the ones that we are looking at are moved over to appeal at the moment, so they're being dealt with differently as well.
Yeah, and for us, Chelsea, we our mid-value tend to get the same DM, but then there might be some information and more personalized connection by email or in phone calls, etc., that complement it. And then the Christmas cards, the personalized Christmas cards, kind of just add to that stewardship over that period.
Perfect, thank you. What else have I got on? Yeah. For you, Hazel, Trish wonders, what was your proportion of warm versus cold supporters in your DM mailing? How many did we send it to warm? I can't remember, was it?
But 7,000 warm.
Yeah.
So it was small, it was really small. And that was actually, we went back a couple of years further than we would normally. So yeah, 7,000 warm, and then the rest was cold drop. And we didn't even have, I mean, because we decided in the cold drop quite late on, we didn't get the postcodes we wanted either, really. Especially in the Glasgow area, a lot of them had gone. So yeah, big difference, really big difference. And it was the cold donors came from the door drop and online. But yeah.
Yeah, the thing that we found with the cold door drop, obviously you're a national charity, so door drops work really, really well, and they're really easy to do if you are a small regional charity. You've got your postcode, you've got your catchment area, you're good to go. I remember when we first got your postcodes, and we were like, well, it's just the whole of Scotland, and that is like a lot of houses, and
Yeah.
it's probably like a lot of money we're spending on that. So we had to be really clever in the way that we analyze not only your warm data but your cold data. And we did that kind of overlay system where we looked at your warm donors, looked at where they lived, looked at how that affected your cold, where you had support online, where you had support from kind of like retail or events or something like that. And I remember we ended up happily having at least one postcode in all the kind of major areas. But it's difficult, especially at Christmas, because the larger charities do have the budget just to blanket book a whole kind of city or a whole area a year before, and they don't have to worry about analysis. But that is something that is super key for cold donors. Your warm donors will tell you who your cold donors are going to be.
Other strange thing, I don't know whether you remember, was the weirdness around some of the postcodes covered huge areas.
Huge, largest I've ever seen. It'd be like one postcode with 4,000 houses in it, and I'd be like, what? This is like a whole town.
Yeah.
You've you hit on an important point that we haven't mentioned though yet, in that if you are planning that kind of cold activity, Pam, not so much because it's going through the post, but if you are doing door drop, which has weight restrictions, then you'd want to be looking at those at the beginning of the year rather than now, because as Chelsea has mentioned, a lot of the larger charities are able to purchase those weight bands a lot quicker. And if they do that, there is a limit on how much the post person can carry. So you may miss out on the postcodes that make the most sense. On the flip side, it's a very good way of seeing which ones are popular and therefore maybe earmarking for the future. So I think we probably have time for one more question, Chels.
Wow, I have a question from Linda from Christian Aid Ireland, but it's not for Ruth, it's for Hazel. Which is fun. So Hazel, Linda asks, she is very interested in your cold donors, and would you say that your warm donors were mostly acquired from using your services? How did you get your warm donors, I guess, is the question.
Warm donors, not from services. Usually, again, this is a thing that we're looking at because SAMH previously had a fear of asking anyone in a service to donate, because obviously we deal with a whole gamut of sort of depression, anxiety through to severe and enduring mental illness. So people didn't want to ask. The donors that we have tend to be in memory or have come through lived experience from relatives, etc., and different things. So they're not service users. So that's the warm donors that are there. However, we have just done something as well where we looked through all of our Just Giving donors, because we were saying, you know, we haven't, the data is quite small, and we know that community and events, we know that our eventers will probably unlikely to become regular givers at any time, because that's what they are. But they're Just Giving. We started to look at everyone that we had the permissions to say that we could contact them, and started to contact them asking if they wanted to hear about fundraising. And we've just now put from that another new 4,000 donors onto our list. So it's yeah, we've been very careful over the years that don't ask service users for any money. I don't believe in that. I think, you know, again, if people know who we are and are using us, they can say no. But if they want to support us, they absolutely can. So we're looking at two different things. We also have campaigners, because we're a campaigning charity. We've never asked them for money either. So I have 15,000 campaigners sitting in a database that has never been asked to give. And I don't have permission to contact them for fundraising. So I'm at the moment looking at a way that I can speak to them, because again, I would quite like to set up a membership scheme where they actually do a direct debit to pay for our campaigns, because campaigning is expensive and that's what we do. But again, as I say, there's 15,000 in a database, and we don't ask them for anything other than a signature now and then. So I'm just trying to work out my GDPR and everything else of how can I get to these people, because it won't come under legitimate interest. I need to just look and see how can I get to them to say, would they consider funding a campaign?
That
I
is
hope that answered it. Did I answer that question?
yeah,
You did
that's
answer that, thank you.
super interesting. That's can I just say thank you so much, Hazel, Katie, Ruth. Thank you so much for being with us and spending your lunch hour with us. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure that everybody who was here today and who will be viewing this in the future will also appreciate it. Huge apologies for my lack of Zoom expertise. Hopefully you got the gist of the slides when they finally came up, but I did figure it out at the end. We so appreciate it. We will be having another webinar in the next month or so. I'm not really sure what it's on yet, but we will have something, so hopefully it'll be of use to you. If anybody's heading to the Chartered Institute of Fundraising conference on the 3rd of July, Chelsea and I will be doing our slightly infamous death talk. Please do come and say hello to us, or even come and sit in and listen to it if you would like to, but we would love to see you there. Our LinkedIn's here. I will be sending out the links to the actual webinar. If you wanted to watch it again, that's super. But for now, thank you so much for coming along, and have a good rest of your day and a happy weekend when you get there.